So news headlines are reporting about the upcoming solar eclipse, especially about how the current tilt of the Earth will cause a swath of the North American continent to be in the path of totality. It's a great phrase, isn't it? The path of totality. I've not experienced what occurs in the path of totality, but people who have share about the awe and the sense of strangeness this natural phenomenon causes. Some people travel again and again to recapture this sense of strangeness and awe, following the path of totality every few years. But for some, it's enough to experience it once. What stands out, however, is that everyone who has experienced the strangeness and awe of the sun being covered over by the moon says it causes a transformation, a change that they carry with them for the remainder of their lives. Author Annie Dillard writes in her essay, Total Eclipse, about being in the path of totality in the Yakima Valley in 1979. She begins with these words: "What you see in an eclipse is entirely different than what you know." She describes what it's like to experience a wall of dark shadow speeding at her, seeing it moving up the valley and then being upon her. The wall of shadow travels at 18,000 miles per hour. And it meets her, causing the world to still, the mind to clamor, and the heart to stop, and then feel exhausted and frail because the world is swaddled in darkness. Dillard's words about experiencing the path of totality were in the background of my mind as I read and reread the words from the Easter account according to the Gospel of John. The idea of things being different that we just heard, we will change. That idea of difference, strange, and hard to grasp, help us both frame and place ourselves in the story that Joanne just read. So let's tune into that story. Mary sets out early in the morning, when only the smallest signs of dawn's light touch the sky, to take on the intimate task, and really it's a sacred task, of washing and perfuming the body of Jesus. Her teacher, her friend, someone who has brought change, hope, and care into her life. The shadow of his hard and heartbreaking death still hangs in the air, and it feels like it could return at any moment at that speed of 18,000 miles per hour. Mary's heart is truly broken, and she's exhausted. She's frail, and questions are clamoring in her mind about Jesus' death and what's next. Mary really is experiencing her own path of totality. The death of Jesus has shaken what she knows. And it's caused a shadow which looms large and feels inescapable to be very close at hand. The light of being known and loved by Jesus has been covered over. A stone rolled in front of the tomb holding him. And the only thing she can think to do is to travel back towards where his crucifixion and death occurred, to share in one last act of love by caring for his broken body. The weaving of the story invites us into this space of knowing a common response to the death of a loved one is to take on a task. We take on a task because the shadow or the path of totality the death causes is unnerving. Our minds and our souls cry out, "Give me something to do, something tangible," because the loss of light I am experiencing, the darkening of the world that I am going through, are entirely different than what I've known. A task gives purpose and meaning. Washing and perfuming Jesus' body gives Mary a purpose to move away from whatever room has been awash in her tears and held her grief. The washing and perfuming of the dead in the time of Jesus and still today is typically a task reserved for people closest to the deceased, often a family member or a close relative. While other gospel stories share that Mary traveled with other women, in particular Mary, the mother of Jesus, to partake in this task, the Gospel of John points that Mary goes alone. Mary, this bit player in the gospel up to this point. Yet here she is, she's journeying out on her own to the tomb, setting out before dawn has stirred, because grief, anguish, and heartache have no regard for time. And they're not concerned about Sabbath laws or proper ways to observe the Sabbath. Mary walks towards the place hewn from rock housing Jesus' body because it's what she can do. Grief keeps her from thinking through practicalities. She does not have a plan to roll away the heavy stone blocking the entrance to the tomb. Her heart, her mind, and the life flowing through her need something, anything really, to get away from the looming and wide shadow of what is next in a world without Jesus. And at this point, practicalities don't matter. Her journey brings her to see, even in the dim and almost non-existent light, the stone meant to cover the entrance to the burial cave rolled away. This is a transformational moment, and the story being told by John's gospel account doesn't want us to overlook it. In this moment, Mary encounters the unexpected, and in this moment, she becomes a holder of news that will forever change the course of her life. Even though the ramifications of this news of the stone rolled away are unclear to Mary, she knows she needs to share it. Isn't it interesting how in the story, the world seemingly rushes on after Mary shares the news of the stone rolled away with Peter and the beloved disciple whose name is John. The two run ahead of Mary, stand at the entrance of the tomb, dare to take a few steps in, and then leave to return to whatever remained of the life they knew. Annie Dillard, in sharing her experience with the Path of Totality, wrote that in the midst of the darkness of the sun being covered, a stream of light came from people stuck in morning traffic, turning on headlights of their cars. And the strangeness of seeing these headlights streaming on roadways, because it seemed as if the drivers were oblivious to what was occurring. They had to get to work, and the world was rushing on, as if the sun being covered over had not happened. The world rushes on, and Mary is again left alone to encounter grief and the unknown. One translation of the story describes the scene this way: Mary's heart was on the ground as she stood outside the cave. Tears ran down her face. Here Mary stands, time stopped, not rushing, but present with the unknown. I think we like to rush past this point in the story because the details of Mary being alone, heartbroken and weeping, they're hard for us. Yet the flow of the story wants us to also stand with Mary as the uncertain comes to her. And it wants us to be present and sense the uncertain, because it makes the promise of the unexpected dawning from the shadow of totality truly incredible. I invite you to recall how John begins the telling of the good news story in the first chapter of the gospel. The story begins with these words: "Before time was measured, the Word moved, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word breathed, filling all things with living and breathing light, a light that thrives in the depths of darkness, blazes through murky bottoms. It cannot and will not be quenched." Friends, the story follows this arc. Dawning light breaks into the shadows. God refuses to leave Mary alone and heartbroken outside the tomb. God comes with a healing balm, a sacred encounter, sending light into the empty space of the tomb, causing heaven and earth to meet, and speaking the words, "Dear one, why are you weeping?" But we know that grief can cause us to not see things. And grief and anguish keep Mary from sensing the sacred happening. There's no awe or trembling like others experienced when heaven and earth touch in the stories of Scripture. There's only the sharing of the reality that Mary knows. "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." This is a moment of revelation. God is lifting the veil. God is causing light to break forth, to shine out of the tomb, causing what could not be sensed to be known. The sacred, living, and breathing light has not been contained or quenched. God is causing a new reality to dawn as the morning breaks over Mary, the empty tomb, the rolled away stone, and the ground her feet stood on. God is causing a new day to break, even if Mary cannot yet sense it. But God does not stop at heaven touching earth. God meets Mary again in her uncertainty as a caretaker, asking her, "Dear one, why are you weeping? Who are you looking for?" And then breaking through the swaddling darkness by calling her name. Poet Mary Oliver wrote, "Do you think there is anywhere, in any language, a word billowing enough for the pleasure that fills you as the sun reaches out, as it warms you, as you stand there empty-handed?" The moment Mary hears her name, she is awakened to the sacredness of the unquenchable light present in the caretaker standing before her, causing her to be alive to the same light present in her and all around her. The sun, reaching out and warming Mary as she stood empty-handed, causes her to stand in the unquenchable light of God's unbound love for the world and recognize she is not alone. Who are we looking for? Is another way of asking, are we willing to live into the promise of the unexpected? The promise that God's love is bigger than the shadows of whatever path of totality alive and present in our lives is. It's bigger than that shadow that threatens to overcome us. It's a promise that causes us to know with a depth and a certainty that God will not leave us to tears and anguish. God will cause newness to break forth, reminding us that flowing through our essence, our very being, is the divine. The divine caretaker calls Mary to be a sharer of the good news. She's given a new task, a new identity, one where Mary's deep gladness meets the world's deep hunger. It is in this new task Mary is able to live as her authentic and enduring self, engendering profound joy. Jesus calling Mary by name awakens her to the deepest truths she's running through her. Her heartbeat echoes the heartbeat of God, made known in the risen Jesus. And this is the revelation for you and me. Friends, we are Mary in today's story. Our heartbeat echoes the heartbeat of God, made known in the risen Jesus. Resurrection enlivens you and me to the divine light in and all around us. Donna Ashworth, in her poem entitled Joy, shares the following. Joy does not arrive with a fanfare or on a red carpet strewn with the flowers of a perfect life. Joy sneaks in as you pour a cup of coffee or watch the sun hit your favorite tree just right. Joy is meant to slither through the cracks of your imperfect life. That's how joy works. You cannot invite joy. You can only be ready when joy appears and hug it with meaning, because in this very moment, joy chooses you. Friends, joy chooses you. The risen Jesus chooses you. He speaks softly and tenderly, calls your name. Even when your hands are empty, your cheeks are stained with tears, and you know anguish and heartache. God will cause heaven and earth to meet for you to know God's love. Nothing can separate you from God's love. Mary, set free, knowing the fullness of the new day dawning, lives into the promise of the unexpected. She finds others and shares, I have seen the Lord. Shadows and darkness, the unknown and unexpected, do not bind the divine. The divine continues to open new beginnings and invites you and me to be a part of these new beginnings. You have been chosen. This is the promise of the unexpected. God in this new day has given you a new task and a new identity. You are carriers of the good news that a new day has dawned. The strangeness and unknown of the dark are not the last word. The heart of God is open and pouring out into the world. Light is breaking through. The path of totality is not the end of the story. Instead, it is the beginning of transformation. Love is alive. Profound joy is waiting to be embraced. And at the same time, send us out to share the good news of knowing within the depths of who we are, the Lord is alive and moving in our lives, enlivening us to hope and newness, just as the sun's light breaks forth, glorious and new, after a total eclipse. May we know this light. Jesus is risen. Jesus is risen indeed. Amen.